Hey, Yinz guys and gals, gather round for a journey like no other. It's time to hop on board the Where Yinz Goin podcast. From the rivers that meet at the point to form downtown Pittsburgh, to the Great Salt Lake, to the furthest corners of the globe, Matt and Katie will be your compass, your confidants, your companions of that, as we explore the wonders of travel. So kick back, relax on your couch, and let the wanderlust wash over Yinz as we discover new horizons and reminisce about old favorites. With Matt and Katie by our side, the sky's the limit. Join Matt and Katie on the Where Yinz Goin podcast, because when it comes to travel, the journey's just getting started. And now, without further ado, let's give a shout for your guides through the highways and byways of travel, the planning partners, the travel tandem, Matt and Katie.
How Yinz doing? Welcome to the Where Yinz Goin podcast. I'm Matt. I'm one of your hosts. Today we're going to pick up on part 2 of our 3-part series talking about the Battle of Gettysburg and visiting Gettysburg. Joining us again today are Tyler and Roger, the two Civil War reenactors. I hope you enjoy. So now we have a little bit of a background. Let's talk about actually visiting Gettysburg. So the visitor center there with the cyclorama is probably the most famous thing that shows basically Pickett's charge as if you were standing in the middle of it. And if you look on one side, it goes all around. It's a circle, cyclorama, that you can see the Confederate soldiers coming on one side behind you making the charge. And then on the other side, there's the Union Army doing the defense at the stone wall and at the angle. And as you can see all around, and they just redid that, 8-10 years ago. And I haven't seen
it. So
yeah, neither have I.
I have not at all.
You did not have a childhood, did you? I'm convinced.
I've only been to Gettysburg 5 times.
Oh.
I've only been there 5 times. That is it. Harper's Ferry, I lived at.
Yeah, the last time I was there was right when they were reopening it. And the first day I went to the battlefield and I walked the whole battlefield, walked all around it. I'm like, literally, I walked around the battlefield. And then the next morning, whenever I left, I had to leave before it was open. So I did not get a chance to go in and see it. So I was kind of disappointed. But
it's really good about the visitor center if you have kids. And I tell people to go see it. They have a lot of interactive things for children. And it puts they have a thing there where they have a computer screen where kids get to build their own knapsack pretty much and put whatever they want to carry in it. And it'll tell you if you survived or not, but just by what you carry. They have an interactive camp where they can actually see what a Civil War camp looked like. They actually have musicians where those kids can actually practice drum beats. So, and then they have interactive maps and they have an interactive thing too, where actually you hear the secession speeches from each state and what each side was feeling. So it's very interactive. They have the uniforms in there. They have cannons in there. So it gives you a perspective of the Civil War that they can actually touch.
and again, it's things that help bring the Civil War to life. That it's not just, here's these dates, here's this thing. It's not just this thing that happened then and there. It makes it tangible.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I was there was 2023. I was there twice. I had a reenactment for the 160th Gettysburg, but I went up a month before, went jacket shopping, and I went up for a reenactment that was kind of a play. But we went into the visitor center. They have a thing where you pay $12 and it's basically a museum in the back. Worth the $12. By God, worth it. It had Stonewall Jackson's stretcher from Chancellorsville. Robert E. Lee's camp set up, like all this stuff he had with him. First Corps flag, just a bunch of stuff.
They actually have an original Confederate battle flag from the 18th North Carolina that still has its battle orders painted on battle wires.
They have so much stuff, and it's worth $12 to go in and see that. And they had a little device. Now, I'm running around with a kid, like a kid here. I'm a girlfriend, but I'm like running around with a kid, like she's trying to get me under control. Come read this, take pictures. I'm like zoom, 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 zoom. They had a little map thing on there, kind of touchscreen. and you could type in the regiment or like pick numbers of the regiment and see where they were, see how they moved and all that. I'm just over here like
It'll also tell you their casualties, how
Yeah.
many bullets they went through, everything you need to know about that regiment is right there. Who commanded it? Who was second in command?
I basically wanted to pick this home and take it, but get in trouble for that one. I basically wanted to live in that museum, and I didn't know it, but apparently there's part of a barn or a house on the ceiling that shows where a cannonball went through the.
That is from the her house on Hers Ridge.
Yeah, it hit the what's it called?
It hit the it went through one side of the house, through all the roof joints and out the other side.
And they have all the roof joints like lined up.
So you actually follow the path of the cannonball.
And I'm
That's
like,
pretty neat.
I didn't get to see it last time I was there. I'm kind of because I'm like, wait, where is this at?
You actually have to look up. They actually have it up in the roof.
Yeah,
you
so
actually
I have
look
to-
in the roof.
That's my plan, and hopefully on March is do that. Hopefully, I'm like staring over my girlfriend, please.
And now outside of the visitor center, there's all the monuments that are all around the battlefield that pay tribute to the different regiments and the soldiers who fought in the battle. And so whenever you watch the movie Gettysburg, they didn't film it at the battlefield because they can't with all the monuments now. Although now if they try to do, probably do a CGI and remove a lot of that sort of.
Some parts filmed on the battlefield.
Some of it were, yeah. But for the most part, they was
Yeah,
a few miles away.
Actually got to do the reenactment where the 155th on where they filmed the movie. The ground is basically like the actual battlefield.
Yeah.
It is horrible.
They actually,
It's pretty on point.
yeah, it's pretty on point. There's even stuff away from the battlefield that people don't know about. Like there's the Sykes Bridge. Sykes Bridge is just a real red covered bridge. You don't think much about it. But in that bridge was hung 3 traitors.
See, that I didn't know. I just thought wounded was taken through it. And
No, there was 3 men hung there for being spies during the battle. But it also, the bridge was used by both armies to get across before the battle and after the battle. The bridge is still there, but it's not known about it because it's not part of the main battlefield. So when you go to the visitor center, you can get a map and it'll show you all the different points of interest, even around the battlefield.
And then you can also get audio tours
Mhm.
that you take with you. I guess now they're MP3s. I remember our first visit, it was a cassette tape that we put into the car.
Saying Stephen Lang does a good bit of the audio tours.
Yeah, he
You're
does.
basically Pickard or Stonewall doing your audio tour, and it's like, okay, this is cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool that he gave up his time to.
Well, he's wrote a couple books about Gettysburg as well. He wrote even a children's book about the wheat field. Don't know how you got a children's book out of that, but he did.
Desensitize it, tone it down a bit. That's kind of like Tom Hanks, that after he did Saving Private Ryan and then Apollo 13 and From the Earth to the Moon, that he's gotten really, really into both World War II and the early NASA stuff.
I feel like you go to these actors' house, you have to play reenacting with them. I really feel like that. I think they did it on like Jimmy Kimmel or Conan, where like they walked in Tom Hanks' house and he's just throwing World War II stuff around him. He's like, "Come on!"
With the audio tours, there's also the ghost tours. Now, having Stephen Lang as Jackson giving the ghost tours, now that'd be interesting.
Which, speaking of, the bridge you mentioned is apparently one of the haunted places.
Sykes Bridge.
Yeah, is at Gettysburg. But you can't go on the battlefield at night.
But you can't go on the
reasons.
Sykes Bridge at night.
Yeah, you can.
I said you can't.
Oh, I thought you said you can't. Yeah, you can go on the bridge at night to do that. Can't go on the battlefield anymore, but you can go there too at least.
But the cool thing is about the Gettysburg battlefield, they open it at daybreak.
It's dawn,
and it
yeah.
doesn't close until 10 p.m.
It's dusk now.
It's dusk. What says 10 p.m. on the thing?
No, well,
Well, in the summer,
It's dusk.
whenever it
Sometimes
gets,
they keep it open.
yeah.
But yeah, you can experience things at Gettysburg that you don't believe in ghosts, but if you experience things out there, it's happened to me. I don't know if it's happened to Tyler, but I've had experiences at Gettysburg that you just can't explain.
there was one we were just talking about before we started recording. If you want to relay that story.
So my friend, she wanted to get a picture of me and all my stuff. This is at Remembrance Day. And the 31st Virginia has a plaque says 31st Virginia Smith's Brigade. So we always get our picture taken. Every reenactor in our unit usually stops to get their picture taken with it.
A lot of reenactors do. Yeah, they go to where they were and take pictures of it.
And so I'm standing there, and she's trying to get her camera to work, and it sounded like a fife and drum unit, a fife and drum corps was standing right behind us playing. It was that close. And I first thought, okay, there's someone on the battlefield playing. Because that's not uncommon either.
No, God, no.
So we jumped in the car and we went around Culp's Hill, and there was no one there. But they were playing, you could tell they were playing Hell on the Wabash, which was the fighting song of the Iron Brigade. And they were actually on Culp's Hill after the first day. They were sent to Culp's Hill with the support General Greene. So there's eerie experiences there that you just can't explain.
And then you want to say about your knapsack too?
Couple of us went up there, but I did it alone. We went up there and we decided I'm going to walk across Pickett's Charge with all my stuff on. And it felt like someone was shoulder to shoulder with me, and actually felt like someone grabbed my knapsack and pushed me up over a fence. Like I actually felt the knapsack move, and that kind of opened my eyes a little bit.
So when we went up, me and my girlfriend on the 2023, she was filling stuff all over it, man. I didn't, but she was. It hits people differently. I was more sad of just like, knowing and how it gets treated nowadays, and knowing I lost family, or when I see Pickett's Charge filled, it hits me of like, who would do that? Like, why would we do that charge? And it hits. But I've had experiences other places, not Gettysburg, because I haven't really got to go up there too much. And I haven't really done what he's done of going across Pickett's Charge's field yet.
So the one time I was there, this is the last time that I saw a car, station wagon, van, whatever it was. I can't remember the details, but it had whatever paranormal investigators on it. And this was getting closer to sundown. So this was in the summer, or no, actually it was around March. So this was maybe around 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. So about an hour or so before sunset, that they were on the Confederate side, roughly where Pickett's Charge would have started off, that they had their car parked there in the one parking lot. So they can do it again during daylight, not afterwards.
Which you're going to pick it up in day. If you know your stuff and that, you will pick up stuff in the daytime. It doesn't rest up there.
And it may not be like you might see an apparition. It's more of a feeling you get like you are being watched.
Yeah.
It is an eerie feeling. You feel like people are like watching you from the tree line when you go to Pickett's Charge. Like there's Confederate soldiers behind you watching you. It's an eerie
There's
feeling.
video of like people jogging on the Emmitsburg Road, and you hear boom, boom, boom,
Like the
boom,
guns
boom,
going
boom,
off.
like the guns going off. There's a video.
And Tyler's girlfriend's here is nodding her head to all this too.
There's a video, and this made headlines. Someone's going through the Emmitsburg Road, or one of the ones, there's artillery pieces, the two cannons facing, and you just see an apparition just go right between them, clear as day. And that car is moving too fast to be like, oh, I'm just going to, do. It's literally from somebody's dash cam, and you just see go like that, and you're like, it's kind of bone chilling, to be honest. And I imagine it's there.
Oh, it's got to be there. I mean, 50,000 casualties in 3 days. And like he said earlier, they were all young, 20, 18, 16 years old.
And they were scared. Like I said, my girlfriend, she gets the thing of like the feeling of they're scared, they're nervous, afraid, all that. Like angry. Like she said back in the corner, they're fighting for their lives. They don't know if they're going to survive like 3 days. They don't, like, that was on Culp's Hill. They don't know what they're going to wake up to the next day.
And there's a scene in the book, The Killer Angels. Maybe it's in the movie that right in Pickett's Charge, the Confederate soldiers that are stepping off, a rabbit runs out of its little hole and takes off. And the one guy goes, "Yeah, you better run, rabbit. If I was a rabbit, I'd run too." And I don't know if it's in the movie. It's in the book.
It's in the book.
I was like, I don't know rabbit in that movie.
It was never put in the movie.
The real life, those boys have shot that rabbit instantly. Like, come here.
Yeah,
Well, they're about to step off on Pickett's Charge, so they're saving that ammo. And
but
You don't know how quick they're hungry, are you?
they may have been scared, but I don't think there's one Confederate soldier that would have looked at Robert E. Lee and said, "Sir, this is not a good idea." I think they had that much faith, and that goes back to Lee. They had so much faith in him.
Longstreet said it wasn't a good idea, but he wasn't going across the field either.
No, he wasn't going to cross the field. He just all he do is nod.
Every one of those soldiers were like, Lee told us to do it. We're going to do it.
That's like the movie Gettysburg. And I love this scene. And there's no words to it. It's when the guns are going off and they start panning the Confederate soldiers waiting in the woods line. And you see the one, he's looking at his buddy and he's reading a letter from home. And he's got a tintype in his other hand. And someone said, what do you think that letter is? I said, it could be from his wife, his girlfriend, his family. But he's reading that one remembrance of home because he does not know if he's coming back. And I think that is so typical of a Confederate, or even a Union soldier. They want that last second of remembrance of loved ones, and then they step off. So I love that scene because it shows the Confederate Army in its true form.
And now there's other tours too. You can see too that the houses you can go to. And we talked before about the lone civilian casualty.
Jenny Wade, yeah.
Jenny Wade.
Oh, Mary Virginia Wade. Yeah, her house is a museum, and you can pay to go through it and that. You can't go to her original house because that's actually not her house. You can't go to the original house, by the way. The people that live there get mad.
Yeah, they don't like that.
Don't do that.
But it's kind of crazy about Jenny Wade. She moved to the house where she was killed because she was worried about her. She had her brother with her and a handicapped child. And the other brother was actually staying with another famous Gettysburg civilian, Tilly Pierce. So she grabs up the two kids and she goes to her sister's house. That's where she dies. She dies at her sister's house. And she went there because she thought it would be safer. She did not realize that house that she just went to was going to be between the Union and Confederate Army, like a no man's land, like World War I.
On the hook.
On the hook, where the most heavy fighting is going to be at Cemetery Ridge. And she's making bread, and a bullet passed through the door behind her, through another door, and hit her in the back and killed her instantly. It went through her corset and stopped at the front of her corset. Union soldiers hear the screaming. They run into the house from the backside. They grab the body. They take her upstairs through a blasted out wall from a cannon.
Cannon shell, yeah. They still have the shell.
That went through the house. And they took her to the basement.
At one point, you could have they actually had the wall made where you could go through it, like you had to crawl through it. Now they opened it up.
Yeah, they said that's a fire hazard. You can't do that, so they had to open it up.
But they have a mannequin body in the basement. They tell a story. And then they buried her
in the rose garden behind the house. They moved her again to the church that was the 12th Corps Hospital. When they put in the city streets, they had to move the bodies again. The family had to come to identify the bodies. And they knew it was Jenny because the dough was still on her.
Oh wow!
On her hands. So now she's buried at the Evergreen Cemetery, and you can actually go visit her grave. They opened up the Evergreen Cemetery now. You can actually go in and visit her grave, and she is the only woman other than Betsy Ross that's allowed to have an American flag flying over her grave.
When I went in for the tour, because it was a good experience, the tour, wasn't it? It was during the 55th reenactment weekend. First time Gettysburg and all that. Well, I had my uniform on because I went to go register for the battle. The tour guide is a Union drummer, and I'm like, okay, well, this is already going to be awkward as it is. Didn't think anything of wearing a Confederate uniform in the house. I go in, I get feelings of like, maybe I shouldn't have done this. It feels weird, like being in the house, people are like, it's staring at me, something. I actually was like, when the tour guide's talking, like the bullet went through, and like I guess she had an argument with her mom before, because mom was like, don't quit making bread for him, it's dangerous. She's like, well, strike me down dead or something.
Yeah.
And then she ended up getting shot.
Her sister just had a baby too, and they were real worried about the baby. And Jenny Wade makes a comment, if a bullet strikes me, I'd rather strike me than the baby or you. And she's killed 15 minutes later. So then you have Mr. Burns, who picks up a War of 1812 rifle and goes and fights with the Iron Brigade. He's the only civilian to pick up a rifle and fight. And then Miss Tilly Pierce, she's 16 years old. She actually starts working as a Union field nurse behind Little Round Top. And matter of fact, her book is on sale now. You can actually get her diary. It's called The Battle of Gettysburg from Tilly Pierce's perspective. And it actually gives a civilian's account of the Battle of Gettysburg, but it's her actual diary that she wrote for those 3 days.
But when I was in the, like I said, the Janeway house, the tour guide looked at me and was like, yeah, this is where she was kneeling doing the bread, just points over. There's me just standing in Confederate uniform, like, it's awkward. They still have the floorboards from it too, like just with the blood stain that they have those preserved in the cannon shell. Another place I'd say is the Farnsworth House.
Farnsworth House.
Daniel Lady Farm, because it was a hospital, and the barn still has blood on it.
And I got to give a shout out to the 140th. They're going to love me for this. If you go to the Rose Farm, and you can actually go walk around the Rose Farm, it's at the wheat field. They had a captain by the name of Captain Atchison, and he was killed at the head of the 140th Regiment of Pennsylvania. His men loved him so much they picked up his body and drug him to the rear. He was shot again as they were bringing him off. He was still alive. They were bringing him off. He got hit again. The men quickly buried him and etched their name, his initials into the rock where they left his body with one. It has his initials. It says 140th PV, and his body was later taken. But you can still see the indention where the body was.
There's a lot of rocks that are carved into. A lot you can't see anymore because they put a rule down: if the grass is not cut, do not go in that area. But there's a lot of rocks where they just initialed, scratched in them from the battle when they returned, the veterans. What another place to go see, the Adams County Historical Society.
Yeah,
they just opened up a new building, which they bought the Farnsworth House.
Yes,
but there's a bunch of museums up there. You're going to be up there a good bit. In a week at least.
Yeah, there are so many museums and
just the battlefield alone is probably a week.
Yeah, you can walk that battlefield, and I've been up there 100 times. And I tell Tyler, I found this monument here. I didn't even know it was there.
I didn't even know there's a Union monument behind Confederate Avenue. Like where Pickett's charges, apparently there's a Union monument. You just tell me.
First Vermont sharpshooters and the second U.S. Brigades sharpshooters were in that area. They had snuck in behind Confederate lines. They were sent on a reconnaissance in force, and they were going to go in and they were going to see what was behind the Confederate lines. Well, when they went in there, they had no idea where the Confederates were. They bumped right into part of the vanguard of Longstreet's corps, and they fight a pitched battle all the way back toward Little Round Top. But no one ever goes visits their monuments because they're away from the beaten path. So that's why you said, get out and walk the battlefield. You will find something different every single time you go.
And there's monuments on the side of Little Round Top. That's hard to get to. It's just
16th Michigan is really hard to get to until they redid it all.
There's one on Big Round Top. All the way up there.
United States Sharpshooters, first U.S.
I ain't going up that mountain.
It's a big hill. It is.
Hill.
But yeah, if you're going to walk around it though, bring good hiking boots or hiking shoes, walking shoes, and a lot of water. And you will put some miles on. I think whenever I did, it was somewhere around 14, 15 miles walking all around that stuff. So
and there's no flat spot. It's either uphill or downhill or
pretty much the rolling hills of middle of Pennsylvania. Exactly.
I think it's Sharpsfield is
yeah.
Curve. It rolls.
It undulates. Yeah. Now there are plenty of different hotels to stay in, and there. I don't know if you guys have a favorite or one you want to pick out. I just stayed in, the local Holiday Inn or whatever else that is there.
Last time I stayed in a hotel was up there. It was 1863 Inn, which is by Jenny Wade's house.
But what's really cool about Gettysburg, say if you're not into the hotel thing, you want to do a bed and breakfast.
Yeah, they got those too.
The Tilly Pierce house. I stayed at Tilly Pierce house one time. Great staff. I've stayed at the Farnsworth house.
You guys to drive out a little bit and follow how the battle went, go stay at the Cashtown Inn.
You stay at the Cashtown Inn, yeah. So if you want the Civil War experience, if you want to see what it's like to live in 1863, I would say the Farnsworth or the Tilly Pierce house, because the rooms are even decorated as they would have been in 1863. So you get a good feel of what civilian life would have been like.
Then where do you go to eat?
Ooh. The big important question.
O'Rourke's.
that's our go-to.
Or the pizza place.
or the Dobbins house.
I haven't got to go there.
And so what we get at Overworks in the Dobbin House. I know what you get at the pizza place.
Oh,
That's where you get that's waffles, right?
Dobbins house was built in the 1700s during the Revolutionary War. It was one of the first houses in Gettysburg. What's cool about that place is it's all lit by candlelight. So when you eat there, you feel like you're actually in 1863 or the 1700s, whichever time period they have it in at that time. Oh, what do I like there? I like their prime rib at the Dobbins house.
I've never been there. It's always too packed.
Well,
Every time I try to find a restaurant, it's too packed.
The
Blue and Gray Bar Grill's packed,
Mhm.
and then that place is packed.
What's cool about the Dobbins house too, they have a little museum in there too. That house was actually used in the Underground Railroad. So they have the places where the slaves hid on their way to Canada. Because Gettysburg's only maybe 20, maybe 30, 40 minutes away from Maryland.
Yeah, if you
Virginia's right across.
Virginia's right across from that. So
yeah, the movie Remember the Titans.
Mhm.
That they're doing their football camp in Maryland. They go through the run, although that's a heck of a run to get there. Movie magic, okay.
Movie magic, poof, like Star Trek. Poof, you're there.
And actually, my fraternity house in college in Erie, Pennsylvania, had an underground railroad, was used for the underground railroad. So in the basement, there was this extra back little room you would go in. And being in Erie, once you're up to there, if you can get a boat across the lake, Canada. And people may or may not have sailed from Erie to Canada on weekends because the drinking age was 19 or is 19 in Canada.
That's
and not
college
21.
stories. That's some college stories.
No, I never got on one of those boats.
So he's
Statute of limitations over. So yeah, no, never happened. I did not. People did. I
If you want desserts, Mr. G's.
Mr. G's ice cream.
Yep.
They're probably one of the best. There's also, if you go into the Circle, there's also a candy store that deals with homemade fudges and
I go to that
chocolate
store. I ain't
truffles.
I ain't going to the candy store. I'm going to the hat store.
yeah, he goes to the hat store all the time. I got 100 hats now.
and at O'Rourke's, what type of food do they have there?
The pub and restaurant.
I'll say based on the name,
Yeah, it's a pub.
it's Italian, right? No, I'm kidding. Good Irish pub.
It's named after Colonel O'Rourke, who was killed at Little Round Top. He's commanding 44th New York.
Yeah, sorry, it's been a hot minute since I've been there.
I'd have to say probably their hamburgers are probably the best there.
They got good French fries.
They got good French fries too.
That I do remember.
And as you started to say, buying hats, where would you like to go to buy souvenirs in the shop?
Matters your price.
I say, in other words, everywhere.
For Civil War hats, I'd have to give it to Dirty Billy's.
Yeah.
By far, he does women's hats, the bonnets and stuff as well. Everything's hand done, so the hats are actually period correct American. He did all the hats for the movie Gettysburg. Shop wise, there's Gettysburg T-shirt company. If you're looking for just a shirt that says Gettysburg,
Even National.
As Roger's wearing a sweatshirt that says Gettysburg.
Actually, I want this Gettysburg shirt company.
You got Regimental Quartermaster for just
Maryland,
reenactment stuff.
Maryland,
Southern for
S&F,
reenactment stuff.
Butler,
Yeah. Reenactment stuff, there's a bunch. Tourist stuff, you can really.
the Irish Brigade.
Yeah.
They're right along the Baltimore Pike. They sell a lot of tourists.
Isn't that place burned down?
Yeah, it's now something else now.
Yeah.
It's still the same owners.
But like tourist stuff, you can really find about every 2 feet up there. But reenacting stuff, there's a bunch of places. But you can buy a Gettysburg T-shirt in the.
Now, if you
National
really take
Park
home
building.
a piece of the actual battlefield, you can go to a place called the Horse Soldier.
Yeah, don't dig a piece up on the actual
please
battlefield.
dig
Please
up the
don't. No,
battlefield.
do not.
They will.
Don't desecrate. Don't even take rocks. Yeah,
Yeah, they
don't.
will rescue.
And we'll tell the story about the Devil's Den rocks in a minute. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
They, like I said, there's all kinds of stuff to buy there. So yeah, I like the Gettysburg T-shirt company. They're owned by real nice people.
And Tyler, your book that you found.
Oh yeah. So I didn't bring it with me because of the weather, but there's a book that I found at the National Park building because they have a good book selection. And this book is basically every troop movement in the Gettysburg campaign leading up to Gettysburg and after. It's probably how many good pages? What, 100?
What did we say? It was 150, somewhere around there, I think we said.
Yeah, about that. And it's worth the buy. I think it was like $40. And it just shows every movement. Like 2 o'clock, this regiment was here. 2:05, it moved to here to support these guys.
It's the only book that I've seen that we've actually looked at that actually has a minute by minute account of Pickett's charge. Like where these guys are at. The charge started at 3 o'clock. The charge was over at 3:45. So it's only a 45-minute charge. So yeah, the book he got, it's amazing. It's for any Civil War historian or Civil War enthusiast. That's probably the book to get.
Yeah, definitely worth it. I was even in a hospital bed telling my girlfriend because at 160th Gettysburg, I got heat exhaustion and dropped. And I'm like telling her at the hospital bed, I'm like, hey, the National Park building closes at 5 or something. I'm like, take my wallet, go get this book.
It was a must-have.
Yeah, it was literally a must-have. Like, I was going to get it after that reenactment. I just didn't plan on going to the hospital after the reenactment. But I ended up getting the book. It is worth it. It shows so much stuff that a lot of people don't even know.
Yeah, it even gives you the generals in charge and where they were positioned on the field. So yeah, it's a go-to book. It's like I call it the Holy Bible for Gettysburg. You know,
I don't know if other battlefields have that book made by that
Antietam.
guy. That book?
Yep. I actually saw it last time I was in Antietam. Ooh, I see a trip to Antietam for you.
It's that direction. You can. She's laughing at me. It is that direction. You can go and hit Antietam and just go up through Hagerstown, and you're at Gettysburg. It's not that far away.
Are you sure you just don't spend the whole weekend there?
Is that a possibility?
No, Lord.
So,
So, and Tyler also has another heirloom that he did not bring today, but he brought before with the glasses.
yes, I have.
You can't buy. Yeah, you're not going to buy this at one of the stores. He has this passed down.
My family member that was at Gettysburg. I didn't bring those. Those are nice wrapped at home.
There is a place in Gettysburg you can buy original stuff. It's called the Horse Soldier.
Don't tell me that.
They're the only people. Them and the Gettysburg Museum are the only two people licensed to actually sell actual stuff that was
There's
found
a
on
giant
the
antique store
Oh,
out
there's
there
a
too.
giant antique store. They're the only ones that actually go on the battlefield and look. But you can buy stuff there, but it is pricey. I'm not going to lie, they are pricey.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is so much to do in Gettysburg. Like Tyler said, you'd have to only spend a week in Gettysburg to see all the shops and all the battlefields and
See all the monuments, and sometimes there's not even most of Confederates have some monuments on the Confederate Avenue, West Confederate Avenue. There's all the placards in them, like here's Armistead's brigade, all of his guys, regiment lost all that. Reading all those because Armistead didn't get a monument. We have the Virginia monument. We have state monuments. The Union have regiment monuments.
they have monuments for Armistead does have one monument at Gettysburg. It's just not known.
It's in the National Cemetery, technically.
Yeah.
Oh, no, he has two.
He has two.
Where
Here's the
he
one that fell. Which ain't really where he fell.
Yeah.
I always tell people, read those plaques. It'll give you in depth on their troop movement. It'll give you how many bullets they fired, how many men went in, how many lost, how many wounded, how many were missing. Some of the monuments will tell you
those
too.
monuments.
I'll use an example. The 11th Mississippi. Their monument has a beautiful Confederate soldier in bronze, kind of giving the motion to move forward. But at the bottom of the monument, it tells how many men they went in with, how many were killed, how many were missing. And the 11th Mississippi went in with 300, giving up people an idea of what losses were like for these regiments. The 11th Mississippi went with 837 people at Pickett's charge and only walked out with 82 people were left.
So that's 90% lost.
And that's just in one engagement.
In North Carolina, they have like a kind of like a wall monument.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have a monument kind of like
They have their state monument.
they have their state monument, but with that they also have like one it's kind of like a sidewalk kind of thing built into the ground.
Yeah. It tells the regiment.
Yeah. So they have like 3 monuments right there. And then they have some over where they fought for the first day.
Yeah. The cool thing about the North Carolina, like I was saying, I followed the path of the North Carolina regiment, the 26th. if you really want to follow the path of that regiment, go to the North Carolina Monument and stand right at the corner. And if you walk in a straight line, they'll take you right to their other marker at the wall. So you can actually walk the 26th North Carolina's direct path
and see what they were facing.
And it makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck.
They don't have cannons on the wall, do they? It's further. They have the cannons further back.
But the Union guns?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have back about maybe 30 yards.
But they during the actual battle, they probably had cannons on the wall.
Actually, no, they didn't. No.
I figured they would for.
No. What they did was artillery was never put up on a wall like that. Only in very certain instances. What they would do is they'd have the infantry there in front. That's their support. Cannons don't do very good by themselves. Ask poor Captain Bigelow. They would put the infantry in front of the guns, and the guns were usually back up on a hill a little bit or back from them. They'd elevate over the infantry in support. Most Confederate soldiers who made pick a charge, and it's in their accounts, did not see the Union guns. They could not see the Union cannons. Because if, like Tyler said, when you walk across pick a charge, it's not a big flat field. It looks flat in pictures, but it actually rolls. So the men were going down in hills, coming back up, going back down, and they could not see the Union guns. They knew the Union guns were there because they're getting shot at by somebody, but they never did see the Union guns, so they made it to the Emmitsburg Road, and then they saw the Union guns. So Napoleon would have been very proud of the Union Army at Gettysburg for their deployment.
And then once the Confederates hit that wall, it was canister, stuff like that. And you're not surviving canister that close.
And for a perspective, canister is rather than having a solid shot cannonball, the canister is a bunch of tiny little marble sized things. And were they marble sized or were they just cut up metal?
Like a tomato can?
Yeah, it's tomato. And
a ball bearing out of a transmission out of a car.
So it's basically a shotgun.
Yeah.
That it's shooting out of a cannon a bunch of little bullets.
It almost makes the cannon a great big 12 gauge shotgun. If you think of it like a gun perspective, it makes it into a shotgun.
There's one scene that who is it who had the bad leg? Garnett. That he on the movie Gettysburg that he's riding his horse, and we'll get to that a little later. And he goes into a cannon fire that's shooting.
Like double canister.
Double canister. And then the horse rides out. And my chemistry professor from high school says, he's like, all of them, they're on a big pile of ground meat right now. Yeah. He's not coming out.
Matter of fact, General Garnett was the only Confederate general's body not recovered. He's still classified as, well, he's dead now, of course, but at the time he was declared missing in action. He didn't get missing in action until 1875, and they officially declared him wrong.
Yeah.
Which I imagine they probably at that point, how close they were, went double canister. So
that horse was not running out.
That horse was not running out, and there's nothing left of him.
Yeah, they what we call the red mist.
Yeah.
Maybe shreds of his uniform, but that's going to be with everything else going on. You're not getting that.
And that's another thing too. I always tell people. Everybody looks at the famous generals, the ones that were lost, like Armistead and Garnett, and some of these other generals, and Reynolds, especially Reynolds. But there were some other brave generals that don't get mentioned. I always tell people,
even some generals that weren't generals.
Yeah, Dorsey Pender is a prime example. He's a brave general. He's killed on July 2nd. Cannonball exploded, and shrapnel went through his body, and he died on the 18th of July. A very brave general, Vincent Strong.
He's a colonel.
Yeah.
And up in Erie, Pennsylvania, they have a school, the Strong Vincent, and there's the Strong Vincent Bridge.
There, I believe.
There's an interesting picture. There's a famous painting. It was done by Don Chiriani. And Don Chiriani, if you ever look at his work, he's very good. He's very meticulous on their uniforms and their body movements, and he's a very good painter. There's a famous painting of Strong Vincent standing up on the rocks at Little Round Top, and he's got a riding crop in his hand. Well, the riding crop is real. It's actually at the National Park Service building now. They actually have it on display, that riding crop that he had that day. Really interesting story about the riding crop, and I didn't know this. It was his wife's, and it was brand new. It had an ivory handle, and she said, "Don't take that to war. You're going to lose it." He says, "No, I'm taking it." And she says, "Well, you better bring it back." And unfortunately, he was killed, and it was taken by another Union soldier. The riding crop was not returned to her until the 1880s. But yeah, that there's a famous painting of him with that riding crop, and he was actually up on those rocks that day, trying to lead the 16th Michigan.
Saying who else stuff brought back? And this Governor K. Warren, his son, binoculars were brought back to the battlefield when they reopened Little Round Top right before they reopened.
Now, Governor K. Warren, interesting. He doesn't command a corps. He's actually the chief engineer of the Army of the Potomac at this time. He later commands the 5th Corps, but he's chief engineer. And he goes up on Little Round Top and says, there's no troops up here. This is the most important part of the battlefield. There's nobody here but a guy with a signal flag guy. So he has one of his staff go back, and the first one they find is Strong Vincent. And Vincent, without orders from his superiors, moves his entire brigade to Little Round Top without orders. He does it on his own. So I always tell people, yeah, go visit Lee, but go look for the individual guys who are not really talked about, but yet play such a big role that their own heroism and bravery.
Like, I think Vincent should have got the Medal of Honor before Sickles.
Oh, yeah.
So now we talked about a bunch of those terms out there of regiments and brigades and corps, and just to give an idea of what we're talking about here is that a squad would be about 7 to 14 men. And these numbers will vary depending on the system that you were using. Was it the French system in?
Some were using the French, some were using British, some were
just whatever.
Russian. Yeah.
So a platoon would be 3 to 4 squads. A company is 2 to 5 platoons, so roughly around 100 men. A regiment is 10 companies, so that's 800 to 1,000 men. And after battle starts with the regiments, they started with however men, 1,000 men, but then whenever people their casualties, they didn't replace them. So you fought until no one was left or your time ran out. So they would diminish. So these numbers can vary a bit. A brigade was about 4 to 6 regiments, so about 2,500 to about 5,000 men. A division was 3 to 5 brigades, so you're looking at 25,000. And then a corps would be 2 to 4 divisions, so around 80,000 men, 75, 80,000, somewhere around there. So just to give an idea of where we talk about this, of how many people are there, how big of a thing are they, is someone commanding, where in the line are they with command, that type of thing.
It like you said, as the war progresses, you start seeing the numbers start to dwindle. Well, by the time of Gettysburg, most Army corps in the Army of the Potomac were only around 20 to 30,000, because they had been at Fredericksburg, they had been at Chancellorsville, they had fought at Antietam. They had fought in some of the grueling battles, and some regiments were even from the west that were transferred to the east. So it, like you said, it varied in the regiments, varied in the corps, the give and take. But my favorite corps commander, we often get in these arguments around the campfire who our favorites were. My favorite one is, and that every Confederate reenactor is going to kill me, is probably General Hancock.
Union general.
I know.
Out of any Union general out there, that is probably the one I have the respect for. After that, I don't like any of them.
Yeah, he's probably the only one that gains Confederate respect, because he did beat us on a couple of battlefields, and he beat us pretty good at Winchester.
And we'll talk about him a little more when we talk about Fredericksburg, that he was outvoted by higher command. But just give some background on the war leading up to Gettysburg, is that we're going to have a couple different names for these battles. That the North named battles for the nearest body of water, like the river, creek, whatever, and the South named it for the nearest city. So the Battle of Manassas, Manassas, second Manassas, that's the southern name of it, and the North is the Battle of Bull Run, first and second. So on December 20th, 1860, South Carolina secedes from the Union. They were the first to go. On April 12th, 1861, which, by the way, April 12th, that's going to be, is that when? No, that's the Titanic. It was April 14th that Lincoln was shot, and then he died on the 15th. But April 12th, 1861, that's Fort Sumter. General P.G.T. Beauregard, he was the Confederate commander who fired on it. And Abner Doubleday, so supposed inventor of baseball, he fired the first shot in the fence of Fort Sumter for the Union. And he's actually going to be at Gettysburg too. Jumping ahead, just to give an idea of some of the battles, is that June 3rd, 1861, the Battle of Philippi, which is a Union victory, but Philippi is now part of West Virginia. It was in Virginia at the time. And here in Morgantown, it's 45 minutes an hour south of here.
Yeah.
So the South won a lot of these early battles. The North had all the quote unquote good generals other than Lee, and they had a lot more supplies. So they had the big names and the ones who were, respected, who moved up. But the South had the motivation and they knew the land and they had Lee. And we talked about that before.
Yeah, we didn't have the 61.
61. Lee doesn't take over the army until the 7 days when they fight McClellan at the 7 days. And that's only because Joe E. Johnson's wounded.
He died, didn't he?
No, he actually fought in war. He actually surrendered to Sherman.
Which one died out in Shiloh?
That was Albert Sidney Johnson.
I always get those two.
Too many Johnsons, yeah.
I always get those two mixed up.
Johnson. This is crazy in the Civil War. McClellan didn't have respect for Lee. He thought Lee was old and too timid. And when Johnson goes down, he's shot at Five Forks. And he goes down and they give the command to Lee. McClellan says, I'd rather have Lee because Lee's going to be too timid and too old and too moral in his responsibilities. And there's never been an account of any time in a war when a general miscalculated another general that bad. Because then they fight the 7 Days campaign and Lee utterly marches around McClellan. He makes McClellan look pretty bad. Lee never has trouble until he meets General Ulysses S. Grant getting in the head of his opponent. He did respect George Gordon Meade. Lee writes before the Battle of Gettysburg when he finds out Meade has command. He says, Meade will make no mistake on my front, but if I make a mistake, he will destroy me.
Other than that, everybody else was just like,
They're mediocre.
yeah.
Or so they thought.
So they thought.
Jumping ahead a little bit, on July 21st, 1861, that is the first Battle of Bull Run, or First Manassas. And this is where Thomas Jackson becomes Stonewall Jackson. He's given that name by General Barnard B. Jackson's, was it regiment then? Or what did he have?
Yeah, brigade.
Brigade. Is he stands his ground against the Union advancement. And B says, oh, look at Jackson up there. He's standing like a stone wall. And then the name stuck. And is that there that Jackson gets shot in the hand?
Yeah, he was raising his hand to tell I think he was trying to tell Sandy Pendleton something, and he had his hand out, and a bullet actually passed. It was more of a scratching going through his hand. It kind of grazed his hand. He was very lucky because it would have shattered everything in his hand. Nice.
Don't worry, I'll get it back.
No.
All right, and we're recording again. We lost internet there for a bit. Maybe we'll take this out in editing. So we're talking about how Jackson became Stonewall Jackson, that he got shot in the hand. Again, it was just more of a grazing thing, not going through, because that would have done a whole lot of damage. Those mini balls, they expanded on contact and shattered things, not just broke. Sort of, yeah. But anyway, it led to a thing that Jackson would often have his hand up in the air, because if he held it down, it'd be from that old wound that just never healed properly, that it would start throbbing on him, and it'd start swelling up. So he held it up in the air. So you see him. The funny thing of him sitting on a fence, sucking on a lemon with his hand up in the air.
He was very eccentric for a general. I think there was two sides to Jackson. There was actually more so. But he had a lot of sides to him. I think he was he definitely was a God-fearing man. That was definitely part of his life. But you see a kind Jackson when he talks to that little girl at Fredericksburg and very much befriends her, very much becomes a father figure to her. But then you have the warrior side of Jackson. So you have all these personalities rolling inside of him, and you just never knew what you were going to deal with when you talked to him. there's a famous line when he's talking to Sandy Pendleton when they're doing his after action report. He says, "Read the Bible; it's full of after action reports." And he said, "I'm going to go get." He looks at his report, so let's go get some cookies, and you know. So you have this many sided Jackson that many people just don't understand about him, and many historians have tried to pick him apart and figure him out, but no one's ever really figured him out.
And another side of him, it's in the movie Gods and Generals that he's talking to his cook, who is an African American slave, but it's the kindness that Jackson shows towards the cook. That while whenever you read, like Uncle Tom's Cabin, you had some of the slave owners who were complete, notorious, horrible, abusive people, but then there are other ones who owned slaves, but they were slaves, but they did not abuse the slaves. So, while some slave owners, they had the slaves, which not good, but they were not overly and just overtly and needlessly cruel to the slaves.
I think we got to remember something about Jackson in context. He didn't believe in slavery. He thought it was a moral evil against God. But he would not draw his sword against Virginia either. Because he even says it in the movie. My destiny lies with Virginia. If she remains loyal to the Union, I remain loyal to the Union. If Virginia succeeds, I must meet my enemies on the battlefield with such determination that we'll win the war. So Jackson was not he was one of the ones that wanted to arm the slaves on condition of freedom to fight in the Confederate Army. He was one of the officers who talked to Jefferson Davis about it in '62.
I always like the black flag, bro.
Yeah, give him the black flag. So
yeah, I like that one.
And you want to explain the black flag for those who are not?
It is no quarter to the enemy. You basically just
kind of like what Santa Anna did to him at the Alamo.
Yeah.
No prisoners.
Yeah, you just no prisoners.
Yeah, black flag's coming. All right, he's I don't know why you want to advertise that, because then they're going to fight even harder against you.
And then the Union did it to us at Fredericksburg when coming through the city, because how we were shooting at them when they built the pontoon boats, the Confederates were sniping at them in that. The Union didn't like that, apparently.
They killed every Mississippi sharpshooter they could find.
Yeah. So that was one of the quotes I like, is just give him the black flag. And I like Jackson for the fearless bulldog of let's give him everything we got.
If you have the uncut version of the movie, they showed the Council War before Lee invades Antietam. If you have the uncut director's cut, and you see him in a Council of War, and Lee says it's too early to go in the winter encampment. Let's take the war on offensive. And the first person who speaks up is Longstreet. Says, "Sir, I don't think this is a good idea. We'll be away from our supply lines. We'll be away from our base of operation." And then you have Jackson on the other side of the table said, "It's about time we take the war to the north." So, like you said, you have that yin and yang kind of giving in the ears. It's
like the angel and the devil sitting on different shoulders.
Yeah. I'm like, in our reenactment battalion, one of our sister groups that reenact with us is the 33rd Virginia, which is one of Stonewall's brigades. I used to be in the Stonewall Brigade. I was in the 2nd Virginia. So I'm a lover of Jackson, basically. I'll be like, I like how he fought. He's straight on, I'm going to rush you.
Yeah. Now, the 31st, we're part of the Jackson's Foot Cavalry under Jubal Early. So the Stonewall and we basically chewed the same dirt as the Stonewall Brigade. So there's a lot of respect there between the two. And
to what Roger said before, that's the director's cut of Gods and Generals.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking for that. And Antietam was in late September. Was it the 17th?
1862.
And so getting to winter camp, you can't really do too much in the winter. Walking around in all the muck and the mud, all the snow makes things more difficult. Food's harder to come by.
Someone tried it, didn't work out for him too. It doesn't work.
Well,
we'll get to that.
Go back in history and talk to anyone who's tried to invade Russia in the winter. Napoleon, Hitler.
Well, it doesn't work.
Yeah. So, but with the first Battle of Manassas, or first Bull Run, that the Northerners actually came out to watch the battle. They were picnicking on hills. Let's see. Everyone, the North thought, oh, this is going to be over in a few days, and we'll get things back to normal. And then the South actually put up a fight, and the Northerners, who were the civilians, actually got in the way of the Union retreat, and so the Unions were retreating through the civilians.
Matter of fact, there was three, I forget the name of the senators. There was three United States senators captured by the Confederates at the First Manassas. So yeah, let's go and watch a picnic, go watch a battle.
Yeah.
Funny thing now, look what we do at reenactments.
Yeah.
Yeah, look what happens now.
Yeah.
So about a little more than a year later, August 28th through 30th of 1862 was the second Battle of Bull Run and Manassas. So they came back. It was not the same battlefield, but they're a few miles apart. They're pretty close. And then September 17th, 1862 was Antietam or Sharpsburg. Again, we mentioned bloodiest day of the war. Jumping ahead to a few months to December 13th, 1862, that is Fredericksburg. That the Union was up on the heights on one side of the river. The Confederates were across town on the other side. The Union hesitated. They were, and this is the thing where Hancock, I think, earned a lot of respect of who knew about it, that he knew we cannot wait. They're digging in. The South had the wall, the stone wall that they were hiding behind, so they had protection. And gets referenced in Gettysburg as well on the other end. And then Union was waiting to get these pontoons so they could go across the bridge. And it was a foggy morning or a misty morning, whatever, that you couldn't see. And so you saw these, as they're trying to build it, the Union soldiers are putting together this pontoon, the engineer, and they're getting sniped at by the Confederates. And they're coming back like, what do we do? And they eventually did get across. And then it was a unmitigated disaster for the North. They got slaughtered coming across that field, going up and down these little planks. There was a little ditch, and there's an account in Gods and Generals of Chamberlain, from the second or 20th Maine, that he got caught in that, and it's kind of gruesome and morbid, but they were piling up bodies in front of themselves because they got stuck there over the night.
They actually fought the next day too, and then was ordered to withdraw the next night.
And that night, whenever they were out there, it was interesting that they got to see the Northern Lights. That's a famous account that the Northern Lights were active that night, that far south in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I know that this past winter, I got to see a couple of them, here in Morgantown. That was pretty neat. They actually showed up a little bit better on camera than you could the naked eye. You could sort of see a faint glow, but on camera, it really popped out.
Was Chamberlain the charge on Mary's face?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I didn't know because how they put the fiction part in there.
No, that part was accurate. They were at Antietam, but they were in reserve. I think they were sick.
They were reserved there. I didn't know on Fredericksburg if they actually.
Yeah, they actually made the charge. And
if you get there again, the director's cut of Gods and Generals, you see Adelbert Ames ride up on his horse, and he tells Colonel Chamberlain that the day has been costly and neither side has gained ground, and we're going to be held in reserve. And you can see the irritation in Adelbert Ames's face. Adelbert Ames even said after the war that they could have won the war that day in Antietam if McClellan wouldn't have been McClellan.
Yeah, I think everybody says that now. They could have won the war there, or at least it ended sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then jumping ahead a few months, this is April 30th. And May through May 1st of 1863 is Chancellorsville, which is very close to Fredericksburg, not too far away. And it's a infamous area called the Wilderness, which is it's heavily wooded area, a bunch of, rough brush and shrubs and whatever else around, hard to get through. And the Union gets routed. That Jackson loops around and he comes in from the side and he flanks them. And there was some of the Union lookouts actually saw it, and the Union generals didn't believe them.
I think what hurt Chancellorsville was, and Tyler may agree with me, it was General Hooker. Joe Hooker, who did great at Antietam, did great at Fredericksburg. He's getting reports from Oliver Howard's 11th Corps, and he's saying, I see Confederates on the road, because there's a I forget the name of the hill, maybe Snyder's Hill, that you could see across the valley, and there's another road, which would have been the Orange Turnpike. And he sees Confederate troops. And he reports back, and then Hooker says, well, that's just Lee retreating back toward Richmond. I have Lee where I want him. And here it was Jackson's Corps. And he was making the flank march. And they told Howard not even to dig in. So you'll hear it in the movie Stewart says their flank is in the air. What he means by that is they didn't dig in. There's no water hazard on the flank. There's just an open area. And that's the open area Jackson had hit.
It's somewhat, it's comical in the fact that it's so sad that the Union are there on the flank and they're cooking dinner and just doing whatever else. And all of a sudden they see a deer run by and they're like, oh, let's, grab your rifles, guys. Let's get some fresh meat for dinner. And then there's more deer and all these animals are running out and they're like, what the heck is happening? And then the Confederate troops come like out of the woods and completely slaughter them and get them on the run. And it's just chaos. Although that is also then leads to Jackson's demise, that they rout them so much that the Union's on the run. And as evening comes on, it gets dark and it's too dark for them to pursue continue the battle, that Jackson rides out to do a little bit of scouting. And on his way back, he runs into the Confederate picket line. And picket line is kind of like an outer guard type thing. It's your outer picket fence, if you want to think of it that he's shot by the 18th North Carolina Infantry Regiment. And this is after midnight. It's on May 2nd as he's returning, and he gets shot a couple times. He ends up losing. He gets shot in the hand, gets shot in the left arm, and then in the chest as well, or the shoulder. And as I mentioned before, that those mini balls would shatter bones. And so he ended up losing his left arm, and with the complications from that, he dies of pneumonia on May 10th, 1863. But it's during that campaign in Chancellorsville that, as Rogers mentioned a few times, a little girl, that the house that they're staying at, there's a little girl who's, 8 years old, somewhere around there. And in the movie, such a cute little girl that Jackson befriends her, and it becomes his adopted little daughter. They'll eat cookies together and they'll have their lemonade together, and she's making him little flower things and whatever else, and she just absolutely adores him. He adores her right back, but she ends up getting sick and she ends up passing away too.
Scarlet
fever. Yeah, she falls ill,
and they killed General Longstreet's family the same year.
And Jackson even calls his personal physician to come in to take care of the little girl, to try to help her and the family. And so it's a real sad thing that they both die. But Jackson's wife, she just had a baby, she comes and brings the daughter. So Jackson gets to see his daughter before he passes away. But in the movie, Gods and Generals, I don't know how true this is, but he's in there and they bring him like glass lemonade. He's like, oh, this lemonade, it's way too sweet. This is just like, and then just like, as you will say, like his wife makes, and then she walks in the room.
She was with him. She was with him for a couple of days before he passed. And I think it's Jackson being so religious. He even said, let us cross over the river and sit under the trees.
Rest under the center of the trees.
But he called out for Hill. He said, tell General Hill to come up. Even though him and Hill don't like each other, he's still flashing back. So.
And as we mentioned before, turning point of the Civil War, and even Lee says that Jackson might have lost his left arm, but I've lost my right. That was his right-hand man, and without him, Lee's army is somewhat crippled. Again, as we mentioned, he now has to put in different officers who are not ready for it and don't have the tenacity of Jackson.
What he had done when he reorganized was he looked at his army and he said, okay, who do I have to replace Jackson? He was trying to replace Jackson, which you can't do. It's hard to replace a man like Jackson. So he takes Longstreet's corps. He takes a division from Longstreet, 2 divisions from Jackson's old command, which is now under the command of Richard S. Ewell, Old Baldy as we call him.
Yeah.
And they
useless.
Mm-hmm. And they give A.P. Hill a corps, and that becomes the 3rd Corps, Army of Northern Virginia. But we've talked about this. Where was Hill at Gettysburg? He's never mentioned hardly at all because Hill was always sick. He contracted a sexual transmitted disease at his time at West Point, and he was always sick. He was always ill. But yeah, that's why he had to reorganize, was because he could not replace Jackson. No one could ever fill those shoes. And even through the war, he's always saying, so I need a Stonewall. I need Jackson. really stood out through the entire.
And as we'll find out as we start talking about the Battle of Gettysburg, that if Jackson's there, things go very, very different.
On that note, we're going to cut off or end our episode 2 about the visiting Gettysburg and the Battle of Gettysburg. We'll pick up with our final installment tomorrow. My travel tip for the day is that when you are going to go to one of these national parks, whether it's going to be a battlefield national park like Yosemite or Yellowstone, whether it's one of the monuments in Washington, D.C., whatever places that the National Park Service, oversees and takes care of, they do such a fabulous job with the upkeep and the education that I strongly recommend talking to the rangers. They know so much information and they can really, really improve your trip. And you can go from a good trip to a great trip with the extra things they can tell you, things they can, little tips of, hey, look here, hey, walk here, hey, look at this thing here. And it can really, really make your trip that much more valuable. On that note, make sure that if you're going to go to these places, give yourself enough time. You don't want to go there and rush it and then miss things. Although if that's what happens, if you underestimate it or you're on a tight schedule and just want to get some experience of being in one of the national parks, you can always come back. So keep that in mind. Take your time, read as much as you can, get the most out of your experience. But if you need more time, you can always come back.
So if you have a destination or experience that you'd like to have us discuss on the Where Yinz Goin podcast, or if you'd like to share your favorite destination or a travel tip, please contact me. I'd love to hear your ideas and your feedback. Tyler, how can people get a hold of you?
My Facebook is Tyler Turtle. Yeah, that's how I go by it. It works. And my email is turtleclaypole@gmail.com.
And the 31st Virginia, you have is that a Facebook page as well too?
Facebook page.
Rod, you just want to have people contact Tyler if they need anything?
You can contact through Tyler, or it's brahamroger@gmail.com. We're happy to answer your emails about the unit or how to join it.
Yeah, and we can pass it along if need be, if you're very interested, to the president of the group and stuff like that.
For me, my social media is @Matt with DBD on Facebook, X, and Instagram. Email is Matt, MATT, @dreamsbydesigntravel.com. All this information is going to be in the show description. So if you'd like to contact us or at least contact me to book a trip or have any questions for me or the other guys, you can get a hold of us. You don't have to have this written down or have a photographic memory, anything like that. Don't have to worry about spelling either. Please like, follow, subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend if you like what you heard. We'd like to get the word out about what we're doing here. Gentlemen, this was wonderful. Thank you for doing this a second time. Hopefully the audio is better on this. We've had a very rambunctious crew in the room next door to us in our awesome podcast studio that we're using today. So
They did very well today. Last night they were much louder. They did very well today.
It is an honor again to talk to you. The message that you are doing and the work that you are doing is invaluable, and it's really appreciated. And I'm a history lover, and have people learning and knowing things that actually happened and getting the full details is so important to understanding what happened and why things happened. And that's why I want to do this podcast again, to make sure we had a solid recording of everything. So we put this on record. So please join us next time. We're heading out in that. We'll see you later.